The first way you solve a problem is to admit that there is a problem, or there's a challenge, or there is a blind spot. And that's an aspect that we, as the United States Air Force, I think we are doing right now and across the department as well.
Extremism and extremist ideology. Views and conduct that run counter to everything that we believe in. You know, it concerns me to think that anyone wearing the uniform of a soldier or a sailor, an airman, marine, or guardian, or coast guardsman would espouse these sorts of beliefs, let alone act on them. But they do.
What is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that, because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it.
For decades, service leaders have said that there is no tolerance for sexual assault. But in practice, all too often, there is nothing but tolerance.
We cannot have people who are trying to serve our country in this capacity or any to be harassed or discriminated against because they're a woman or a minority or a gay or whatever. And so where we find that, not only do we sort of articulate our that it is unacceptable to have this culture, there gotta be consequences, because if there are no consequences, there's no change behavior.
How, as a people, can we come together to change?
There can be a lot of diversity issues and struggling to accept others from where they came from.
These conversations have to happen until we don't have to have them anymore. This is something that we should have already been doing.
We have to think of innovative, new ways that we can lead a diverse and inclusive, encompassing force, and that's how we can maximize our potential.
How do we open up all those opportunities for our force so they can all have the opportunity to succeed and reach their full potential?
In our services and society, we have clear safety issues, disparate treatment, and far too often a merger of the two. Evidence of these occasions are at the quick fingertips of any member and leader with a quick Google search. Recent acts of insurrection and racialized domestic terrorism within our ranks have reached through operations and have been identified as a threat to national security. As we all know, extremist ideologies like those expressed by Chief Warrant Officer to Lieutenant Christopher Hassan, who was accused by prosecutors of plotting to kill members of Congress to advance a white nationalist agenda, are not limited to any branch of the armed services. Here, a senior enlisted, promoted to warrant, and then to an 03 lieutenant, self-identified as a white nationalist for over 30 years in writings, advocating for focused violence in order to establish a white homeland. We know that extremist behaviors are not new to the military, with each DoD service and the Coast Guard documenting so-called race riots in their histories, which at times resulted in death. Even the Air Force during the Vietnam War had over 135 individuals arrested in an airman dormitory area for racial violence. Even before Crispus Attucks, first to be KIA in the fight for independence, there has been diversity and inclusion efforts for all demographics not deemed to be normal. As that definition has shifted, the power structures for mostly white, cisgender males has been that hard nucleus around which others have clustered. The Air Force and civilian uniformed services have all adopted a see something, say something policy. With continued resources and initiatives dedicated to the effort, there is still numerous cases of fear and retaliation for speaking out for lack of credence given to members questioning and challenging unsafe situations, like the pleas for help from Army Specialist Vanessa Guin or U.S. Air Force F-16 pilot First Lieutenant David Schmitz, who both prior to their untimely deaths raised flags that were not heeded by their leadership. Psychologically unsafe environments have led to historically high suicide rates and continually low retention rates for women, Black, Indigenous, people of color, also known as BIPOC, and LGBTQIAP+ military members across the board. One official from the commission recommending removing sexual assaults from the chain of command explained, "We have heard for many years that there is no tolerance for sexual harassment and sexual assault, but we learned that in practice, there is quite a lot of tolerance." That same commission official went on, and I want to say very clearly that we reject the notion that shifting legal decisions about prosecution from command to prosecutors diminishes the role of these commanders. We believe instead that it enhances their role and places them in the lead of taking care of their people, the number one job of commanders in creating climates of no tolerance for sexual assault, sexual harassment, and related crimes. Similar research and experiences have been recorded concerning BIPOC and LGBTQ+ members as well, and are often amplified when intersectionality occurs. So what has been the inhibitor for the change in our respective service climates? Is it just time? We've been working for this well over 350 years, and at most conservative of estimates, while the fight against harassment, retaliation, and bullying could be considered to have been going on even longer. We must first create a foundation of psychological safety. As stated by employees at Google recounts, "We had a research all hands after George Floyd protests where people were crying. People were so emotional. We're like pleading with leadership to do something different because we're so exhausted." We outlined a bunch of principles. Number one thing, though, we said was psychological safety. If you don't even have the psychological safety to discuss what you're facing, then there's no way to even move forward. There's no way to fix your company's culture. To truly construct a culture of mission success and then innovation for everyone, we must start with psychological safety first, where all members are safe to be their authentic selves, learn, contribute, and challenge. They are then free to develop moral courage and to speak out against unethical moral practices, and consequently be able and ready to engender cultural competence. We cannot effectively learn about our own and others' cultures without the safe space to question and to speak out on injustice. Only then can the voices and sensitive aspects of our cultures be brought to the collective inclusion table to reap the benefits from diversity and equity. This is what is required to simply meet mission with some significant effort to begin to innovate. This is the healthy to innovative framework that will actually create the climate we need to meet mission, recruit, and retain. Conversely, the opposite is true. If we deny psychological safety, inhibit moral courage, we will in turn stifle cultural competence, eliminate inclusion, diversity, and equity to not only sacrifice our mission acuity and innovation, but lead directly to extremist ideologies.
I do think there's some things we need to change. And when I think about that change, it's certain factors, or what I would call accelerants, that are happening to us right now that allow us, or force us to take a look at ourselves to change. But I really think when you look at great power competition, that if we don't change, we lose. What we don't want to do is wake up 5, 10, 15 years from now and go, and God, I wish, what were those guys in 2020 doing? I really want to make sure that we are having these conversations, but also making the changes. And if the change doesn't happen, it will not be due to lack of trying on my part, because this is where I'm really going to be driving for, is to really take a hard look at ourselves and make the case, and then talk about the risk if we don't change, because there is risk if we don't change. And it's an aspect of why we have to do some things internal to the Air Force. At the same time, it's how we engage and be collaborative with our key stakeholders that are external to the Air Force that ensure the national security that we all enjoy.